let's get this month's Out to Launch started. We're going to begin with the SpaceX Roundup. Okay, June 24th, Booster 7 was lifted onto the orbital launch pad using chopsticks or Mechazilla, whichever name you prefer. I kind of like Mechazilla just because then it speaks to the nerd in me. And this is all in preparation of the static fire test, which is in preparation for the orbital launch test. Okay, that's fantastic, but it's all possible because the FAA has finally given their environmental impact report, and they have given a conditional, very conditional, lots and lots of conditions that you can read on the FAA website, and I highly recommend you do. It's entertaining, but this is a conditional okay. They can continue testing their booster on the pad, but it's important to note that this is not an orbital launch license, which means that SpaceX can't just send Starship to space just yet. That approval is pending, and well, we're waiting for the results of Texas's own environmental impact, among other things. Okay, moving on to NASA. We've got the CAPSTONE launch. On June 28th, NASA's CAPSTONE mission launched from New Zealand. It was on board Rocket Lab's Electron. This is one of the smaller launchers, one of the smaller full orbital launchers, actually deep space launcher, turns out. Okay, so CAPSTONE, what's this mission, you say? I'm glad you asked. CAPSTONE is a fun backronym. I love backronyms. I want to share my love of backronyms with you. Okay, so CAPSTONE, bear with me. Cislunar Autonomous Positioning System Technology Operations and Navigation Experiment. I love it. It tells you everything the mission does, sort of, as long as you can translate that through through science and engineer speak. And then it forms this lovely word capstone, which is just fun and engaging. Okay, so what this does is it is a test bed. This is another engineering test platform. It's putting the E in CAPSTONE's experiment. It is an early stage for the International Lunar Gateway Program and the Artemis program. And what it's doing is going into a near rectilinear halo orbit around the moon. This should give this CAPSTONE mission nonstop line of sight to Earth, which will facilitate nonstop communications for when we send people, which is important. All right, so moving on, last month, Jared reported that NASA's PSYCHE mission to PSYCHE asteroid was delayed from August to September of this year. Unfortunately, the technical issues that Jared alluded to, they are more substantial than was hoped. It's not an issue with the craft. Unfortunately, it's a communication breakdown between the craft software and the test platform needed to test that software. And it's not just any software. This is basically the guidance and navigation software. So JPL rightfully said, we need to make sure that we can fully test every bit of this code, because that's not the software you want to fail on your mission. The patch between the craft software and the test platform has been corrected, but the delay was substantial enough that they're going to miss this year's launch window, which closes on October 11th. So looking forward, there's going to be an independent panel put together to decide if this mission will go forward. All right, so this is not just unfortunate for the PSYCHE mission, which was going to be, or will hopefully be, the first to go to a metal-rich asteroid, but also the two missions hitchhiking with it during its launch. On board the Falcon Heavy that was taking PSYCHE to PSYCHE was also the Janus mission, which is a twin spacecraft. These twin craft are named Serenity and Mayhem. I love it. And these twin craft were going to binary asteroid systems. Each craft would get its own system. Very cool, never been visited before. And mounted on the PSYCHE craft itself was a deep space optical communications technology demonstration, which is basically engineer speak for this is testing light communication. This was going to up our bandwidth, basically. All right, so this independent panel is going to make a decision. There are 2 more launch windows coming up next year and the year after, so 2023 and 2024. The problem with those launch windows is that they add 3 years to the mission. If PSYCHE had launched this year, it would have gotten to PSYCHE in 2026. If it launches in 2023, so next year, then it won't get to PSYCHE until 2029. If it launches the year after, it won't get there till 2030. So these are not insubstantial delays, and the PSYCHE mission is what's called a discovery level mission, and that's a budgetary constraint. It's basically working on a $700 million budget, and they've already spent $500 million of that. So we hope that the independent panel will weigh everything and decide that it's worth continuing with the PSYCHE mission, but we're going to keep watching because we're not sure how things are going to play out. Okay, and another bit of disappointment. On Sunday, June 12th, ASTRA had a launch failure for NASA's TROPICS-1 mission. Now, TROPICS-1 was being launched on LV-001, so ASTRA's Launch Vehicle 10. They changed their naming scheme a couple missions back. It launched from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, and the first stage functioned nominally, the second stage failed. It shut off too soon, the mission was lost. So that means the first 2 of 6 CubeSats in the TROPICS small sat network were lost, which is unfortunate. And NASA wrote on their announcement page when the mission was lost that the FAA and ASTRA will lead the investigation. NASA, of course, offered any help that they can provide, but they also reiterated that NASA's Launch Services Program continues to work with emerging launch providers to deliver low-cost science missions into orbit. They're just making sure that everybody understands ASTRA's a new company. This is going to happen. It's unfortunate, but to forward commercial space, you got to trust these people and give them a shot to lighten things up a little bit, because there has to be a silver lining in everything. There doesn't, but I'm trying. TROPICS is also a backronym, and I would love to share that with you now. Time Resolved Observations of Precipitation, Structure, and Storm Intensity with a constellation of small sats. I love it. It's amazing. I'm just throwing this out into the universe. NASA, please have an award for best backronym. The just linguistic gymnastics required to make these little bundles of joy happen, they deserve awards. I'm just throwing that out into the internet, into the ether. Please, NASA, have a backronym award. Okay. Moving on to some good news. I'm going to end this segment with some good news because I want to. SLS, Space Launch System. They had a finally successful wet dress. Okay, so their wet dress rehearsals have been fraught. But finally, all right, the wet dress latest attempt was a success. It still had hiccups, but because the engineers on deck for this wet dress were on top of everything, they made it work. That's why you have engineers. All right, I'm not biased at all. Okay, so what happened? Quick rundown. Early in the day, there were some leaks. There was a hydrogen purge valve issue that meant that they couldn't run the liquid hydrogen through the engine nozzles to cool them to the proper launch temperature. What did the engineers do? They said, ha, 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 we're going to make sure that the computer doesn't see that until after all of our launch sequence requirements have been hit. Okay, so that means they hid They rewrote, they put a little quick patch in the code, made sure that the computer didn't see the temperature of the engine nozzles until T minus 30-ish seconds, which is great because the final checkpoint needed for this test, this wet dress to work, was for it to go from computer control in the tower to handing off to computer control inside the launcher. It did that at T minus 31 seconds. And then T minus 29 seconds, the computer checked the temperature of the engines, said, whoa, that is very wrong, way outside of the threshold, shut down. But all of their primary requirements to call this wet dress rehearsal had been met as of the handoff from the tower to the computer, to the onboard computer. Check. Wet dress rehearsal accomplished. All right. It did, however, leave 2 more tests to run. They have to run the basically the gimbaling on the solid rocket boosters, and that requires the SRB test and the HPU test, or hydraulic power unit test. That's okay. They ran that over the weekend. All is good. The next step for SLS is to roll it back into the vehicle assembly building, tweak some other things. There was a camera issue. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Because this wet dress was finally okay. All right, so that is out to launch for July. Come on back in August and we'll have more craziness for you. All right.